I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man. I am an unattractive man. With this whisper of agony, Dostoevsky pulls back the curtains on one of the most disturbing works regarding the human soul. More than mere literature, Notes from Underground is the greatest spiritual warning ever left to us. We are facing the story of the most detestable man in fiction, but do not be fooled by the distance of the pages. He is the mirror of a shadow we all carry. It is the portrait of one who lost himself in the labyrinth of his own ego, a direct invitation to your spiritual awakening. This narrative exposes the darkest aspects of our psyche, those we prefer to hide under layers of justifications. Today, we will descend together into this underground to extract 5 crucial lessons for spirituality and personal development. These lessons represent the turning point between building a journey of light and meaning or sinking into the same hole of bitterness that consumed the protagonist. What we are about to reveal here could be the key to your interior transformation. I ask you to follow this journey with a silent question echoing in your heart. Which of these traits, even as small seeds, have been blooming within me? At the end, share your thoughts in the comments. Your truth might be the beginning of healing for another heart. The narrator of this story is a 40-year-old man, a retired bureaucrat plunged into a misery that goes far beyond the financial. He inhabits a small underground apartment, but his true prison is the solitude cultivated like a garden of thorns in his chest. Here lies the awakening. Dostoevsky did not create this character just to shock, but as a sacred warning. The message is simple, brutal, and transformative. If you do not learn to master your inner world, you risk living in the same basement. Perhaps not a basement of bricks, but a mental basement where presence and peace can never enter. There is a subtle trap in our journey of self-knowledge, hyper-reflection that turns into stagnation. The underground man is the ultimate example of a consciousness that turns against itself. He analyzes every motive, every insult, and every possibility until action becomes impossible. In the field of conscious awakening, we call this the labyrinth of the ego, where the mind creates problems to avoid the simplicity of being. As Stoicism teaches us through Marcus Aurelius, the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, but those thoughts must serve life, not replace it. When we lose ourselves in thinking about thinking, we disconnect from presence and the natural flow of existence. The mind becomes a garden of thorns where no seed of change can sprout, for the soil is saturated with doubt and self-criticism. For the spiritual seeker, it is vital to understand that clarity does not come from an excess of mental processing, but from inner silence. Overthinking destroys self-confidence because it creates an internal courtroom where you are, simultaneously, the judge, the defendant, and the executioner. True wisdom lies in knowing when to silence the intellect so that the soul may act. If you feel paralyzed, perhaps you are trying to solve with your mind problems that only the courage of the heart can cross. Remember, the soul is not in a hurry, it has a rhythm, and the rhythm of life demands the step, not just the map. But this labyrinth of thoughts is not just a prison of inertia. It is the soil where an even more dangerous weed sprouts, contempt for everything around us. When the mind closes in on itself, it stops seeing beauty and begins to distill the poison of nihilism. Nihilism and ill will toward the world are, in essence, a closing of the vibrational field. Dostoevsky's protagonist cultivates a contempt for everything that is beautiful and simple, believing his bitterness is a form of intellectual superiority. However, this emotional poison does not hurt the world. It corrodes the vessel that carries it. In contemplative spirituality, we understand that what vibrates within is what shapes our perception of reality. By adopting a posture of conscious victim, or as an acidic critic of existence, the underground man disconnects himself from the web of life. Seneca would remind us that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and nihilism is the peak of this imaginary suffering. It is a refusal to see the sacred in the everyday, a spiritual blindness that transforms freedom into an unbearable burden. This state of mind blocks any possibility of inner transformation. To begin a process of emotional healing, one must recognize that cynicism is merely armor for a vulnerability we do not know how to embrace. Spiritual awakening requires the courage to be naive enough to believe in goodness and connection, even after disappointments. When you clear the lenses of ill will, the world stops being a stage of hostility and becomes a mirror for learning. Healing begins where you stop fighting what you feel and start blessing what you live. And as we look at the world with this poisoned gaze, we end up making the gravest mistake of our journey. We believe that by withdrawing from life and its struggles, we will be safe. However, this apparent safety is the beginning of a silent process of rotting away. Often, we believe that avoiding conflict, risk, or challenge will bring us peace. The underground man chose isolation to protect himself from humiliation, but he ended up finding a much worse pain, the pain of rotting from the inside out. In Stoicism, we learn that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Running from challenges does not eliminate suffering. It only trades the pain of growth for the pain of stagnation. In our journey of personal development, we must see the challenge as the fire that forges the sword. Spirituality is not a refuge of passivity, but a field of active presence. When we dodge life, our vital energy becomes stagnant, like a river that has stopped flowing and become a swamp. The emptiness the protagonist feels is not the fertile void of meditation, but the sterile emptiness of omission. The soul yearns for expansion. Every difficulty we avoid is a lesson we will have to repeat. The awakening of consciousness invites us to face discomfort with the dignity of someone who knows they are not made of glass. If you have been avoiding taking a step for fear of failing, know that the only real failure is remaining in the underground while life happens outside. The seed must break its shell in the darkness of the earth to flourish in the light. This breaking hurts, but it is what allows for life. It is in this state of stagnation that the soul begins to seek someone to blame, trying to transfer the weight of its own existence into the hands of fate or others. But true spirituality reminds us that as long as we run from the responsibility of our pains, we will be eternal prisoners of the same narrative. The inhabitant of the underground is a master at blaming the laws of nature, society, or his own intelligence for his misery. He flees from responsibility because it demands something he fears, the commitment to his own change. However, in authentic spirituality, freedom and responsibility are two sides of the same coin. Without taking ownership of our lives, we remain trapped in narratives of victimization that kill hope. Epictetus, the slave who became a Stoic philosopher, taught that we cannot control what happens to us, but we have total control over how we interpret and react to the facts. This is the key to personal development, the paradigm shift from reaction to conscious action. By fleeing responsibility, the underground man surrenders his power to the environment and becomes a puppet of his own bitter memories. Spiritual awakening occurs at the moment we say, "I am responsible for how I feel right now." This is not a burden. It is the exit door from the mental basement. When we assume responsibility, we reclaim spiritual authority over our own existence. You stop being a supporting character in a drama of pain and become the master of your own journey of inner reform. Healing is not something that happens to you. It is something you allow through your daily choices of presence and truth. Taking this responsibility requires humility, something the inhabitant of the underground avoids at all costs. To protect himself from the shock of reality, he builds one final castle, that of intellectual arrogance. He uses knowledge not as a bridge to the light, but as a pedestal to justify his own refusal to flourish. The final lesson Dostoevsky leaves us is the danger of transforming knowledge into a pedestal of isolation. The underground man takes pride in his hypertrophied consciousness, using it to justify why he doesn't need to connect, doesn't need to love, and doesn't need to change. It is intellectual arrogance serving as an excuse for spiritual inertia. In the awakening of consciousness, knowledge that does not translate into kindness or action is just mental noise. Stoicism constantly warns us, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Performative spirituality, which feeds on quotes and complex concepts, often hides a heart that is afraid of simplicity. The true master is not the one who knows all the answers, but the one who lives with integrity and humility the truths they have discovered. Using ideas as an excuse not to change is the most refined form of self-deception. We can read all the self-help books, but if we don't apply inner listening and kindness toward the now, we will remain in the same basement. Knowledge should be a bridge to others and to the divine, not a wall. True spiritual intelligence is that which leads us to surrender, love, and connection with life in its most sacred and essential form. Do not lose yourself in your own light. Become the lamp that illuminates the path, starting with your own steps on the earth. At the end of this descent into the underground, we realize that Dostoevsky's greatest lesson is not about human perversity, but about the danger of disconnecting from our divine essence through the ego. The mental basement is a daily choice, but spiritual awakening is one too. What if the pain you feel today is, in fact, the language of your soul trying to guide you out of this underground? To anchor this awakening, I invite you to a simple gesture. Sit in silence for a moment. Clench your fists tightly, representing everything you try to control, all the bitterness, and all the overanalysis that holds you back. Feel the tension. Now, slowly, open your hands. Imagine that, by opening your palms, you are releasing the inhabitant of the underground and allowing the wind of presence to clear your mind. Say mentally, I allow myself to leave the basement. I allow myself to be new now. If these words touched something within you, perhaps it is time to take one more step on this path of reuniting with your inner truth. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue receiving content that nourishes the soul with presence, self-knowledge, and authenticity. Share in the comments what resonated with your heart. Your story might be the mirror someone else needed to find. If you seek a safe harbor, know that our community is the sanctuary where fertile silence is shared and deepened. Enjoy the channel's posts. And to continue expanding this field of presence, we suggest the video pinned in the card. May it be a source of inspiration on your journey. Peace and light.